夠我哋開會嘅法。
We have a quorum, and it's the appointed time. Please invite the administration to join us.
係，就首先呢，就要通過會議。
First of all, we have to confirm the minutes of meeting. The last meeting was the 29th of January. So far, the Secretariat has not received any proposals for amendment. Members, any questions? Or any proposals for amendments? No. Minutes confirmed.
好，歡迎各位，咁我就唔一一介紹啦嚇。
I'll dispense with the introduction.
今日我哋嘅助理法律顧問呢，就係阿盧。
We have Miss Low, our assistant legal advisor. Issues arising from discussion in the previous meeting, that is the 9th of February. You will find the administration's response in paper CB bracket 1548/14-15 bracket 02. I'll ask the administration to take us through the paper before members ask questions. PAS. I apologize, we only have the English version. We hope that the Chinese version will be given to members shortly afterwards. We're quite pressed for time, that's why we couldn't do it. But this is, first of all, in relation to issues that are for the consideration of the appeal board. We had a detailed discussion, but let me briefly go over it. In relation to what issues are appealable, there are a number of factors to be considered. There are 3 clauses, 7(1)(d), E, and F. We think that these should not be handled by the appeal board. The nature of these 3 clauses are similar. That is, the director of the EMS has made a decision, and it, in general, is to ensure smooth operation and safe operation of the system. And also in relation to proper maintenance or works necessitated by an emergency situation, or there is a need to suspend or terminate district cooling services. The decision is made by, based on facts and is related to operation or maintenance. And these matters are simple and straightforward. So it won't be necessary for these issues to be raised to the appeal board to decide on facts. So decisions under clauses 7(1)(d), E, and F are not appealable. And in relation to the term of appointment, that is under clause 24 bracket 4. For government advisory or statutory boards, we have this 6-year rule, but this 6-year rule is only a guideline. Where is possible, administratively, we will stick to that. Members in the last meeting talked about some exceptions or operational needs where there is justification to appoint someone for more than 6 years, which will be an exception. Of course, we will try to stick to the guideline of the 6-year rule, but we would like to keep flexibility, so we will not impose a statutory limit. The third issue is in relation to the appointment of members, whether there will be a staggering arrangement to ensure that different members will leave the board at different times. The appeal board panel is different from other advisory boards or committees because unlike them, the board will not discuss ongoing issues. They are specific. They will only deal with specific cases. So there is not really the need for us to have the staggering arrangement. Having said that, well, we take into the situation, the need of the situation when we make appointments, and we will take that into account when we decide whether to have a stagger appointment. And in relation to clause 25(2)(b), there will be members, at least one member appointed from each of the categories. Our arrangement is that under the 3 categories, there will be at least one member appointed from the panel to form the board. That's the original intent. And we will stick to this guideline to form an appeal board. The last issue is about clause 29, which empowers an appeal board to authorize an inspection of an installation. We think there is a need for this power. For appealable issues, a number of them may involve whether the installation of the consumer is compliant with the requirements of EMSDs, and it may be in relation to a decision of the amendment notice. We see that there is a need to empower the board to authorize inspections. Very often we mention about clause 22(1)(d), (e), (f), but for those, they are not really to be dealt with by the board, but there are issues that are to be dealt with by them. Say, for example, whether they have the duty to maintain the substations, the stations. We think there is a need to have clause 29 to empower the board to conduct on-site inspections. And so that's all for our response. About D. There will be 3 categories. Members will be appointed from the categories. You said last time that you understand the arrangement is just the case that you will make it clear in the bill, but you did not say that. But you did not include the factors for consideration. PAS. In relation to drafting, perhaps I will defer to Mr. C. In relation to 25(2)(b), As Mrs. Ma said, the drafting was based on the policy that is 4 members from 3 categories. So to a certain extent, the Secretary of the Bureau is not prevented from doing so, but we would like to make it clearer. And we have given our view to the Secretary, to the Bureau. I remember last time, say in 2B, there was a suggestion to add a line that is 1 from each category, at least 1 from each category. And you will consider amending it further, is that right?
Further to what Mr. Xi has said, I agree that there is room for improvement here. We'll take a look at the entire bill, and also if members have any comments on the Chinese version, we will also take on board all those suggestions. Yes. As to whether or not we should prescribe the term for 6 years, apparently the administration doesn't think that there is such a need. But at least you should explain clearly your intent here. Good. Do members have any questions regarding the administration's response? Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you. Well, the Permanent Secretary already explained the point regarding the grounds for appeal. I wonder whether she could elaborate further on that. Once the director makes a decision, apparently that decision is not appealable. Is that the case? And if someone should feel aggrieved by the decision, like for example 11.2 or 7D, I mean such decisions are made by the director. Does it mean that the decisions of the director would be final? And if these decisions involve the question of fees or responsibility over the system, then is the decision of the director final? Thank you. Perhaps I will answer the questions in 2 parts. First of all, 7.1 D, E, and F. Well, these involve technical issues, and perhaps Mr. Ma could also supplement later on. To put it simply, under 7.1D, we're saying that in the director's opinion, work is required to be carried out for the installation, inspection, etc., or even the removal of any part of the system for such maintenance works. And if necessary, the EMSD will liaise with the authorized consumer and then pick a date that is convenient for both parties when there is no need to use the district cooling system. So these are technical issues, and that would and we have to leave it to the agreement between the department and the authorized consumer. So there is actually very little likelihood of the need for an appeal here. For E and F, in E, for example, where there is a fault in the system, obviously you will need to carry out the repair works. So we're talking about a technical issue here, and there is no question of whether someone is at fault, and therefore we do not need to refer this to the appeal board. In the case of F, we're talking about an even more exceptional circumstance, which is the protection of life or property. Now, for decisions that are appealable, they would have to relate to the facts of the case. If there are some simple facts and disputes over such facts, we've consulted the DFJ, and normally under these circumstances, as we've said in our reply, it's not that there are no channels for appeal. I mean, they can still apply for a judicial review. since we're talking about, a judgment regarding the facts, the DFJ has advised that we should not put it under the appeal board. So perhaps Mr. Lai could also further elaborate on these matters relating to the facts. I think Mrs. Ma already explained to members regarding the need to protect life and property or emergency situations. Then there are no disputes when there are issues relating to maintenance and repair resulting in the disruption of services. We've looked at the actual situation and concluded that it's very unlikely to happen. Perhaps during the visit, members can also take a further look. So when there's a need to suspend the provision of services, the likelihood is very, very slim because we have backup systems and the pumps and the valves are all in place. Let me give you an example. Say the meter, for example. Normally, for water meters, when we conduct on-site inspection, we do not need to suspend the provision of water. And once every 5 years, we'll dismantle the meter and have it reconfigured again at the plant, at which time we may need to suspend supply for a few hours. We would certainly agree on such arrangements with the owners of the building before we would suspend the service. So that we can calibrate the water meters. So it is only in these exceptional circumstances that there is a need for us to suspend the supply of cooling waters. Otherwise, other maintenance work that would not require the suspension of supply. And even if there is such a need, we would come to an arrangements with the owners or the tenants. And therefore, the possibility of any disputes arising from that is very, very, very remote. And therefore, this should not be the subject of any dispute. Chairman, the Permanent Secretary already explained that some decisions of the director could be subject to judicial review, and that the appeal board will not deal with such decisions. Well, I asked the question because when we come to section 29, it is said that the appeal board can authorize the inspection of installations. I'm sure the installations would include the district cooling system. Members would have noted that here clause 29 refers to any parts of the system, and the DCS is also something which the director can authorize inspection. Now, if the appeal board, well, Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm referring to clause 29 here. I mean, so if the director finds you to be at fault, and then here it says that the decision of the director is already final, and then he can also authorize the inspection of installations. If we discover there's a problem, what can we do? I mean, in some cases, matters could be related to the appeal board. The board may deal with it indirectly rather than directly. So if it is found that there's anything that is inconsistent with the decision of the director, does it mean that the director's decision could be challenged? Well, we need clause 29 if the appeal involves the authorized consumer who thinks that he has already complied with the improvement notice and has done what he is required to do, and the director is still not satisfied, then the matter, well, then there may be a need for the inspection of the installations. I believe for D, E, and F, that is, the director may require the suspension or termination of service because of the need for maintenance and repair works and so on. We're talking about technical issues. and we're referring to the public system. If it involves the system of the consumer, then it will be relating to the improvement notice. If the user doesn't comply, then the director cannot provide service. Clause 29 does not, if it only involves the system of the consumer, then the problem may be whether the consumer may argue that there is a fault with the public system. Well, that is my understanding only. Perhaps Mr. Lai could explain. Thank you. Mr. Chair refers to Clause 29, and here we're talking about the appeal board, which may authorize the inspection of the installations in the building, including the installations of the consumer. If the consumer's installation, for example, if we have issued an improvement notification, and the system of the consumer may not be stable, or as a result, it would affect our system, then we would require him to make the improvement, failure of which we would suspend supply. But the director may not have the power to inspect his installations. We can only suspend the supply of water until he has rectified the system. And then there could be an appeal to the board for the inspection of the installations to see whether or not the consumer has already done his part, and then make a decision. So that involves entry into the installation of the authorized consumers for inspection. And this is the part which the appeal board can give the authorization. The director cannot inspect the installation of the authorized consumer unless approved by the appeal board. Chairman, does it mean that the appeal board cannot tamper with the DCS? He can only inspect the installations of the authorized consumer. Well, for Clause 29, my understanding is that it doesn't say that it cannot inspect. I think basically we will look at this. Permanent Secretary. Well, let me further elaborate. I believe we are now looking at Clause 29. In the English version, we have said that we're talking about an installation of a facility. We're talking about, we have not said that it must be confined to the appeal board looking at the installations in the building only. Any part of the installation that is relevant could be inspected. If we go back to Clause 7, so we're looking at decisions which are appealable, including in the director's opinion that the behavior of the consumer may jeopardize the entire DCS. So there could be appealable cases which involve the behavior of the user. But does that mean that it will affect the entire DCS? That we also need to look at. So in Clause 29, we've not narrowed the scope and limited to only the inspection of installations within the building. Well, installation within the building comes under 29(1)(b). But under 1(a), we're talking about inspection of installation of facilities. So we may need to make a decision to ascertain whether or not what the user has done has affected the entire DCS. So our understanding is that pursuant to Section 29, the appeal board can inspect any of the installations. Mr. Alan Leong. Well, earlier I have referred to Clause 30, determination of appeal. It is said that the appeal board may confirm, vary, or revoke the decision or direction of appealed against, or substitute its own decision or directions for the decision or direction appealed against. I think the focus here is that the administration wants to take out 71DEF so that the appeal board cannot invoke the powers under 31A and B. I think this is the focus here. We only have the English version as far as the government's response is. So let's refer to the English version in paragraph 5. And this is the administration's response.
Establishing the decisions made under clause 7.1, D, E, or F, which may include technical issues relating to the operation and or maintenance of the district cooling system, should be simple and straightforward and would therefore unlikely require an examination of the facts or merits of the case. In this regard, it would not be necessary to render such decisions appealable to the appeal board, which, when they are already amenable to judicial review. 我真係呢度咧幾個字咧係好關鍵嘅，主席。
A few crucial terms here. In the second line, may include. It may. So you are admitting that it could. We're talking about a technical issue, but on the other hand, it may also not be involved with a technical issue. For line 4 should be simple. This is wishful thinking or on your part. Should is simple. The word is very direct. It means it's very direct.
And then the next line that would therefore unlikely, just unlikely. So it is likely as well. So it is possible. And the last line is that they are amenable to judicial review. So there is it's not necessary for it to be appealable. So you're just creating something to exclude D, E, and F from the appeal board. And then you have to be very unreasonable or illegal. Well, I've read the document and I don't understand how D, E, F are different from the others. And I covered this point last time, but it was not answered. And clause 8.
Under 7.1, B, C, D, E, F, or G, the approved consumer for the building may apply to the director for the services to be resumed. 咁即係話 D, E, F 咧，就算係成為
So, if D, E, and F become the reasons for suspension of the service, the consumer may apply to the director for the resumption of service. Is that right? And 8.2?
1. The director may resume district cooling services to the building if the approved consumer demonstrates to the satisfaction of the director that the ground on which the services were suspended no longer exists. 好啦，咁即係話咧，佢係個處長啊，係可以即係。
That means the director may reject the resumption of service. Let's refer to 22. 1D.
Services to building under section 8.2 頭先讀完嗰個咧 where the services were suspended under 7.1 B, C or G 讀咧就冇咗 D, E, F 嘅，咁啊好奇怪啊！出現一個情況咧就係、如果我係個用家，咁你處長停咗我咯嚇，供冷咯，咁我根據8.1咧，我係可以申請恢復。
But however, under 8.1, I can make an application for it to be resumed, and under 8.2, the director may reject the application. However, I can make the application based on D, E, and F. If DEF was used, then I can use 8.1 to ask for a resumption, and under 8.2, my request was turned down. And if using D, E, and F as basis, then it won't be appealable under clause 22. The whole design is quite bizarre, because for D, E, and F, the director's decision is final, and you can only seek redress by a judicial review. So I don't see the logic here. I don't think my question was answered. PAS, could you try to convince me? I think this is just a repeat of the explanation last time. I made a comment which was similar to Mr. Leung's. Why can't D, E, and F be appealable? Will it cause great inconvenience? D, E, and F doesn't involve the behavior of the consumer that result in the director's decision to suspend, and the person may feel aggrieved and would like to appeal. Yes, I understand. But for D, E, and F, it's for technical reasons why the service was suspended. And an application can be made to the director for resumption. Failing that, allowing them to go to the appeal board should not be a problem. Or is there a problem that we don't know? Because I'm sure there will be discussions between the director and the consumer. If the consumer would like to appeal, during the appeal period, the decision of the director will not be suspended. Say, for example, there is a decision to suspend, and during the period of time, the service will still be suspended. But yes, it might be rare for such an instance to happen. I just wonder what problem there will be if we make them appealable. Are there similar approaches in some other legislation? For our reference. Well, in relation to that, I would defer to Mr. C, but I would first like to clarify certain issues. We do not deliberately exclude certain situations from an appeal. What we had in mind was what matters requires a protection, that is for someone who feels aggrieved to go to seek an appeal. So it's not about the exclusion. And we're just thinking about giving an avenue for an aggrieved person to seek redress. About the technical issues, Mr. Lai has already explained. But may I supplement? Well, the member was talking about paragraph 5, but I'd like to draw the member's attention to paragraph 4. It's in relation to clause 7.1. D, E, and F. In the English version, it says,
necessitated either by the need to ensure that the district grilling system will operate smoothly and safely. 咁呢個好重要就係 well maintained according to the professional standards of the industry, or by an emergency situation which requires immediate action. 咁呢一啲嘢咧，其實講緊係一個即係好重要。
So the very important thing is about the professional standards of the industry. And a decision is made whether it can be done or not. Of course, for the professional decision, well, the contractors and the operator of the system will have to maintain a professional standard, which is a standard acceptable in the industry. But the appeal board is not to decide whether it meets a professional standard. We would like the board to be broadly representative instead of just having engineers on the board. The board will decide on disputes or merits, so we will not ask the board to decide what is a professional standard. And as to whether there are similar requirements in other legislation, I will defer to Mr. C. It's like the Water Services Installation Ordinance. Well, I'll refer to Cap 102. There is no appeal mechanism, although the ordinance empowers the water authority to suspend or terminate water supply service. But from the index, I don't see an appeal mechanism. No, why don't you simply take away Part 5 completely? Is that what you mean, Mr. C? So apart from this, are there any other legislations? If we refer to Part 5, according to the instruction of the Bureau, it's based on Cap 610, that is the Energy Efficiency Ordinance. Well, there are some decisions that are appealable, but I so far cannot see what decisions cannot be appealed. I think we have to look at the big picture. Whether a decision is appealable depends on the policy need. It's very difficult to say that, well, all decisions should be appealable. I think it's down to the need under the policy. But my question was unanswered. What's wrong with keeping it there? The appeal board is quite powerful in that it can change the decision made. Say 7(1)(e). So in the event of an operational emergency arising from a fault, and 8, that the fault is not rectified. So it's a straightforward decision to decide whether it has been fixed or not. And if there is a situation when the appeal board thinks there is no fault involved, so say F, that it is necessary to protect life or property, so the service is suspended or terminated. And what if the appeal board thinks that it should be resumed and the director is thinking about life and property? Maybe the director thinks that it is important to protect life or property, but at the same time there is a decision to resume service. We're talking about safety issues here. These matters are not to be decided by the appeal board because it's not suitable. We have taken that into consideration. We're not saying that the decision of the appeal board is unreasonable, but instead about whether the appeal board should decide on whether there is a need to maintain a system or repair a system. Well, my first reaction to what Mr. C said was it must be a joke. But we're talking about logic. Just like your good self said, what's the problem with allowing D, E, and F appealable? There will be consistency. May I remind the PAS? Well, I was referred to paragraph 4, but paragraph 5, here it says, in a suspension of service, the users can seek a judicial review, so therefore there is no need to make these decisions appealable. But if you look at the composition of the board, of the appeal board, there are representatives of the trade.
We're looking at 24. If you refer to clause 24, other than those members such as the barristers and solicitors who don't know the technical issues, there should be not more than 4 members who are members of the Institute of Engineers and so on, and not more than 4 members who are corporate member of the Institute of Engineers in a discipline other than those mentioned in paragraph B, and also not more than 4 members who, in the eyes of the Secretary, are not from the engineering profession. If you even don't trust those members and you leave it to the judge in the High Court to make that decision, the risk is even bigger. This is simply a matter of logic. The Permanent Secretary kept telling us or reminding us that the whole design is that you would need to be aggrieved, first of all. What is meant by aggrieved? If every day I switch on the air conditioning and tomorrow it's off, of course I would feel very aggrieved. Chairman, as you yourself told the Permanent Secretary, we are only talking about a question of logic here. First of all, why is it that DEF is taken out? And secondly, in paragraph 4 and 5 of the administration's response, and together with what I refer to clause 24, I think you should trust them more than you trust the judge, because the judge is not representing the industry. So the logic doesn't work here. And this is what I like to ask the administration through the chairman. I mean, this kind of logic is not the standard that we would expect of the administration and the reply that it would give to a Bills Committee. I think we've discussed this matter for a long time already, and today we now have the response from the administration, and they're only repeating what they told us at the last meeting. And the reply is similar. I personally think that in such a scenario there would be a negotiation, and there would also be a mechanism for the approved consumer to ask the director to resume supply, and if the consumer feels aggrieved, then he can use the appeal mechanism. And I think that would be a lot better than encouraging him to seek judicial review. And I also don't think that JR is a solution to the problem. Obviously, it would take much longer to rely on the JR than going through the appeal mechanism. I agree that 7.1 DEF, that is if appeal it's considered necessary, that would really be not very likely to happen. But I think what is wrong if we also allow these scenarios to come under to be subject to appeal as well? Of course, judicial review and the decision of the appeal board are different, because the appeal board can revoke the decision and ask the director to resume the service. The result of the JR may be different, and I'll ask Mr. C to supplement in a while. Next, about the composition of the appeal board. What the board does must make reference of the professional judgment. Like Mr. Leung said, there are representatives of the engineering industry sitting on the appeal board. We've also said that among the three sectors, we are going to form the board. We want to ensure that there are representatives from each sector. Every time we invite the director to form the appeal board, amongst the 5 members, according to the precedent mechanism, there would at least be 2 members who are from the engineering sector. We're sure that there will definitely be 2 members who are engineers, and there are 5 members on the board. When the board meets, and we're talking about operational matter here, we cannot ensure that the majority of the members are professionals. And this board has to deal not only with the professional judgment here. DEF is all about technical requirements. Now, in case in one scenario the director feels that the DCS is at fault, there's a fault, and if there's an appeal board doesn't agree and order that the supply must be immediately resumed, then technically, in order that we can protect life and property, or to cater to emergency situation, or if the repair work is not finished, then in reality it's very likely that the board may think that the supply should be immediately resumed, but technically it simply cannot be done. In that case, would the appeal board have made a decision that is simply not possible to be carried out, and that may not be a very desirable situation. We don't want really this discussion to delay our scrutiny of the bill. But if we have any doubts regarding the decision of the appeal board, there could be other scenarios which may result in the director making a hard decision. If there's an appeal mechanism, I think we have to trust that mechanism. If you have doubts that the appeal board's decision may affect your operations, in that case, why don't you simply dispense with appeals altogether? It's not the case that all such public services are provide for an appeal mechanism. So, Permanent Secretary, I think in the course of our discussion at these 2 meetings, I don't think we are very convinced. So, would you consider making an amendment in respect of these 2 parts? Mr. Alan Leung, I think that is also what you are asking for. We have Mr. Paul Tony Chair here as well. Mr. Chairman, I've already stated my point. I was just being polite and only refer to one point. Well, another thing about the appeal board, and she hasn't mentioned this yet, is whether or not the decision of the appeal board is final. For some appeal board, you stipulate clearly that its decisions are final. I don't know whether or not that is the case here. Permanent Secretary? Is the decision of the appeal board final? That is, if the board insists that the supply be resumed, even it can't be done? Regarding what the appeal board can do, I think this is to spell out in clause 30 that he may confirm, vary, revoke, or the decision of the, or even reverse the decision. As to well, my understanding is that appeal can be taken further to the Court of First Instance. I think what Mrs. Ma referred to the Court of First Instance. That is, if anyone is dissatisfied with the decision of the appeal board, one can actually, apply for JR, because under the bill, the bill doesn't provide for a further appeal mechanism. Now, if you have a scenario as if what the Permanent Secretary worded is true, then if the appeal board makes a decision which the director cannot enforce, and after the appeal, the board insists that the supply must be resumed, as a result of which there will be more trouble. So what can we do in that scenario? I think if you can also, include that under the appeal mechanism, then it will be fine. Well, strictly speaking, Chairman, the bill doesn't say that if the director does not follow the decision of the board, what would be the consequences. I believe the position of the Bureau is that if ever the board makes a decision, the director would follow that decision. If there are any technical reasons which make it impossible for the director to comply with the decision of the board, then I think the matter would need to be referred back to the director. Or, well, during the last two members, I think our views have been quite consistent. We've not asked for an amendment by this Bills Committee, but having heard the strong views of members, Permanent Secretary, would you consider making an amendment here? In making that consideration, Chairman, this is not just our suggestion. This is a recommendation, after consulting with different departments. It's difficult at this point for me to commit whether I will consider that, but I'm willing to consult with the different departments, including the DFJ and the EMSD, as to whether that's possible. Good. Well, the committee has expressed its position very clearly. The Permanent Secretary, would you please follow up on that? And with that, we will move on to clause 27, and that is hearing of appeal. Chairman, clause 27 is about the hearing of appeal and the procedures. For example, before the chairman of the appeal board must notify the appellant and the director of the day, time, and place of the hearing 14 days before the hearing. As in the case of other appeal board, whether it's the department or the appellant, may be represented by a barrister or any authorized person. And the appeal board may also engage a barrister or solicitor to provide legal advice. And as in the case of other appeal boards, unless there are other reasons, normally we will require the hearing to be conducted in public. But the appeal board may instruct certain persons to attend the hearing or to submit certain documents. If anyone should refuse to attend the hearing or submit certain documents, then it would be an offense according to subsection 7 and is liable to conviction to a fine at level 3. Any comments on 27? If not, can we move on to clauses 28 to 30? 28. Thank you. Clause 28 is about reappointment of appeal board in case of certain vacancies. When an appeal is ongoing and in case a vacancy arises in the appeal board, and as a result, you have fewer than 3 members on the board, then the board has to be disbanded, and the vacancy will need to be will not be filled, but instead the director will appoint another board to deal with the appeal. And in clause 29, I think we will look at just now, that is how we can allow the appeal board to inspect any installations relating to the appeal. In the case of a building, then of course you will need to enter the building itself, but if anyone should obstruct the authorized persons to carry out such inspections, it would also be an offense, and it's liable to a fine at level 3 and imprisonment for 6 months.
Clause 30, determination of appeal. The appeal board may confirm, vary or revoke the decision or substitute its own decision for the decision appealed against, apart from whether there should be a resumption, stoppage that can replace the decision of the department. It may also make order in relation to costs. For brackets 3 and 4, they are in relation to costs recoverable as a civil debt, and the board may issue to the appellant and the director a notice of its determination and the reasons for the determination. Members, any questions in relation to 28 to 30? And there is another meeting going on, and I'd like to talk about this before I leave for the other meeting. Just now the PAS said that there are a number of departments involved, and she had to seek advice from the DOJ. The chairman has also made a concluding remark. Well, if you refer to 22, C at the end, if you delete B, C or G, that is, just stop at 7 bracket 1. For D, it's very easy to address our concern or make it more logical. Just stop after section 8 bracket 2.
Bracket 1 B C or G 咧就唔使啦，咁就得㗎啦，其實就已經處理咗㗎啦。主席，聽我講咩啊？係，即係 C 唔要 B C or G，D 就由。
That is to do away with 7(1)B, C or for C to delete C or G, and for D to stop at section A bracket 2. For 27, 28, 29, the English version. Any questions? It should correspond to the Chinese version, right? Any questions? No? Let's move on to part 6, miscellaneous matters. PAS. Thank you. Clause 31 is in relation to evidence in writing. To B1 to 4, these can be admitted as evidence. And information prepared by the department that is in relation to time and date, they may also be admitted as evidence. And clause 4, the person who signed the document may be summoned and examined. That is in relation to evidence in writing. If there are no questions, I will go to 32 as well. 32 is, well, we've always been talking about director of the EMS. And the 32 says that the director may in writing delegate any of his or her functions to a public officer attached to the EMSD. Clause 33 is in relation to the director specifying forms. In 4 and 23 there are some forms. An application form to be an approved user, and also appeal forms. These forms are specified by the director, and it also says that it will be made available at the office of the EMSD during normal office hours and in any other manner the director thinks fit. 34. In relation to amendment, the provisions under Schedules 1 or 2, the Secretary may, by notice published in the Gazette, make amendments. Legal Advisor. Thank you. 34. The Secretary may, by notice published in the Gazette, amend Schedule 1 or 2. Is it going to be sub-leg? Is that the legislative intent? Or is it going to be by the form of a negative vetting? That's our understanding as well. Any questions? No, the English version. 31 to 34. Any questions? Nothing from the legal advisor either? We have finished with the main legislation, the 6 parts. Now, schedules. I know you have a PowerPoint to explain to us about fees and other matters. Would you like to start? Yes, let's look at Schedule 1. That is application of the DCS. Currently it's only the Kai-Tak one. Schedule 1 is very simple. Let's look at the text. It's just in relation to where the DCS applies. Schedule 2 is about fees, maybe more complicated. And you have a PowerPoint to explain to us. Mr. Lai. Schedule 1 is in relation to the area of the Kai-Tak DCS. Is the area delineated and edged red on the plan signed by the Director of Lands, including the old runway and the area of the old airport. It goes as far as some development of the runway, say for example the pediatric hospital is also under the area of the DCS. That's the coverage. Let's go to Schedule 2. There are a number of provisions. Well, currently there is only the Kai-Tak DCS. And in the future, all fees provisions will be in schedules. I'll go into details when we talk about calculation of charges.
Hi.
There are two main components. One is the capacity charge. Is 110, and the other one is consumption charge. That is the actual consumption. There is also a tariff adjustment mechanism. I will explain later about the need of this adjustment mechanism. Well, back to the original components. Well, one is the charge, the other one is the adjustment mechanism. Back to the calculation of charges. In the environment panel and also PWSC, we have already explained about the charging principles. There are two. The cost of district cooling will be comparable to cost of individual water-cooled air conditioning system using cooling towers. We don't want the DCS charge to be higher than the individual water-cooled AC systems. The system is mainly for commercial use, say office, government office blocks, and also hotels. We would like to recover cost within a period of 30 years. In that, we refer to the capital and operating cost. We won't ask taxpayers to subsidize. Calculation. We use net present value. We talk about cost. It will be easier to understand. It mainly refers to the project cost and the operation cost of the EMSD and the electricity tariff. Income is a different matter because it will only start when consumers start using it, and there are different clusters of buildings in Kai Tak. The completion of these buildings or clusters are different. So if we used a yearly return, it will be very unstable. If we would like a stable one, it will be better to use NPV, net present value. We will apply 4.94, which is the weighted average cost of capital. It's a discount rate. The rate of return should be equal at least to the cost of capital. Using the NPV, the fees level will be quite stable. But if we use the yearly approach, the annualized basis, you will see it's a dotted line. For the beginning few years, the fees are quite high, and towards the end, because the project period has already completed, and there will be more users, and the cost is only related to operation. So towards the end, it will be cheaper, much cheaper than the beginning.
Much cheaper at the end.
So this is not a preferred approach, we will use the NPV and apply a discount rate of 4.94%. We would like to balance the cost and income so taxpayers do not have to subsidize this system. We talk about 30 years of project life in relation to the rate of return, the payback period. We think that it will have a project life of 30 years. That is in the case of the DCS. It's longer than the individual of cooling towers of individual AC systems. They only have service life of about just over 10 years or so. The DCS is a large-scale project. The chillers and the equipment procured by the department will have a service life of about 30 years.
Regarding the 4.94 rate of return, how do we arrive at that? When we calculate the tariff, we've asked consultants to compare our proposed tariff with other cooling systems. When they calculated whether or not we need to build a particular system, they would consider what the rate of interest should be. And the industries that they've made reference of would include those which have large-scale installations and many users and are similar to the DCS, especially the risk involved are very similar. They will take a look at those large infrastructural projects and what is the typical rate of interest, and the result they arrive at is 4.94%. In conducting that study, the consultants have not just looked at the local examples, they've also looked at the regulated infrastructures and the permitted rate of return in other jurisdictions, and they've also arrived at this 4.94%. We've also said that we want to ensure that the tariff for the DCS would be comparable to the charges for buildings with their own, chilling towers. We want to ensure that the tariffs under the DCS will not be more expensive than buildings with their own water tower cooling systems. And this is something that we've shown members before. That is, in calculating the cost per unit for the DCS system, and also the per unit cost for the water chiller system. In the DCS, of course, more infrastructures are required, but we are talking about, they're able to, economize on electricity by about 20% compared with water chillers. So if we take into consideration the amount of electricity charges that could be saved, the unit cost for the DCS for different types of buildings are lower than the cost for the water cooling systems. Regarding the unit cost, and this is a technical point which I'd like Mr. Lai to further explain. Mr. Lai? Thank you. Regarding cost calculation, we have looked at different types of buildings and made a calculation. For the DCS system, in calculating its cost, we'll look at the 30-year lifespan of the system, the projected lifespan, the projected expenditures. The expenditures, we hope, will be able to recover through our revenue. So we want the expenditures to match the expected revenue. So we also project the expected cooling capacity for the next 30 years and the consumption. And then we'll work out the cost for the DCS per unit. And since different types of buildings are involved, so we would arrive at an average figure. For the water cooling system, we have a different method of calculation. assuming such buildings, if they were to install their own water chillers instead of using DCS, then we would, if they have an independent aircon system, then we would work out the unit cost and come up with an average figure and then compare the two. Please go on. Simply put, the unit we're talking about is the unit of cooling service. The bill proposes, if we use the target rate of return of 4.94%, we believe that the unit cost of the DCS should be lower than the unit cost of an individual water cooling aircon system. Originally, we anticipated that the DCS would save on electricity, and the unit cost under the system should be lower than the scenario where a building has its own water cooling aircon systems. So for the next 30 years, buildings using the DCS system should be able to make savings on electricity charges that can more than offset the cost of installing the DCS. There are two charges. First of all, the capacity charge, and we're talking about the cost for the project and the cooling units. The other one would be the cost for operation and maintenance, which will be incurred for the next 30 years. An operator will operate the system. He will charge a fee. For the next 30 years, again, there would also be repairs and maintenance required, and all these will be covered by the capacity charge. For the consumption charge, the majority of that would actually be used to pay for the electricity charges, but there are other charges as well, water charges, but the amount is very, very small by comparison. So the consumption charge would include both. We want to recover costs through the consumption charge. So that's the difference between the capacity charge and the consumption charge. And this is more technical. It explains how we work out the tariff. Mr. Lai will now explain to members how we calculate the cooling capacity. The cooling capacity means that for each user, we would reserve a number of units. We're using the unit we use is kilowatts. And normally we talk about so many tons of air conditioning. We use a metric system. We use kilowatts as the basis. And for each consumer, there will be an agreed amount of capacity, and we would agree on that quantity, and multiply that by the capacity charge, and that would be the fixed amount of capacity charge that the consumer would need to pay every month. Regarding the consumption charge, that would depend on the actual consumption by the consumer. And the unit other than kilowatt, we also look at the number of hours of consumption. And they will vary between the summer season and the winter season. Normally the charge will be high in summer, whereas in winter it will be less. Every month, therefore, the capacity charge would vary, and the consumption charge would vary. And then the charge will be measured by the water meter, and the specific amount would depend on the charge per kilowatt multiplied by the hours of consumption. Well, we also need to explain clearly in the tariff what is going to be the future adjustment mechanism. To put it simply, we want the capacity charge to be able to be adjusted according to the rate of inflation, using the 4.94% to calculate the net present value. We would calculate the real rate. In making that calculation, how accurate would that calculation be? Since we're talking about real rate, we've not taken into account the inflation. So if we want to ensure that we can follow our formula to recover the cost, then the capacity charge in future will need to be adjusted according to inflation before we can ensure that the financial model is really based on the real rate. If we want to ensure that when we calculate the present value, that the figure we project for every year is accurate, then the capacity charge for every year going forward will have to be adjusted according to inflation. And we've picked the CPI as figure as reference, because that would be the most comprehensive inflation figure. It represents the overall rate of inflation for our society, and it's not limited to a particular form of consumption. Rather, it refers to the inflation rate for the whole economy. We believe that the CPI is a more accurate indicator. And another one which looks to be very complex, but actually this formula explains that our consumption charge would also vary according to the changes to the electricity tariff, because electricity tariff may go up and down. Every year at the beginning of the year, we would have an announcement regarding the adjustments to the electricity tariff. So we've stipulated in the bill the consumption charge, and they may vary from year to year. Most of the consumption charge would cover the expenses to incur to pay the electricity tariffs, and therefore the consumption charge, we will be best that we adjust the consumption charge according to the adjustment to the electricity tariff. So to put it very simply, we take a 30-year time period to calculate the overall revenue, the overall expenditure. We want to ensure that there is that is going to be cost neutral. That is, revenue recovery will be able to pay for the of the cost. So, adopting this method of calculation, we believe that that the capacity charge should be $112.11 for each kilowatt per month, and for consumption charge, it's 19 cents per kilowatt hour. We want to, for the commercial buildings, we also like to show members what are the electricity tariffs and how that compares with the charges under the DCS system. Well, the Permanent Secretary already explained how we've fixed the charges for 2014-2015, including the capacity charge and the consumption charge, using that to work out a simple example. Now, for different types, we have different types of buildings. The most typical would be an office building, whether it's a government building or a private commercial building. We have, for example, a typical office building with an area of 60,000 square meters. We expect that the cooling capacity demanded would be about 7,000 kilowatts, about 2,000 or 3,000, tons of cooling. The estimated capacity charge would be $800,000 every month. For the consumption charge, they would tend to vary from month to month. during the summer peak season, the demand will be highest, and the charge could be up to 400,000. In winter, where there is less need for air conditioning, the charge can go down to 200 to 250,000. On average, it's about $300,000 per month. So total charge per month, it's about 1.05 million to 1.2 million dollars, averaging 1.125 million. And the estimated monthly charge per square meter is $17.5 to $20 per square meters. But that does not include the maintenance for the aircon system within the building itself. Adopting this method, and we work out the estimated monthly charge per meter. Or rather, the estimated unit cost of the DCS is about 67 cents. Well, I have one question. Throughout your presentation, you emphasized the need for cost recovery. But in between, you have an operator. So the system is not directly managed by the EMSD. Of course, the operator would need to get a reasonable return or profit. So does cost recovery includes the profits to be made by that operator?
And that will be part of the cost for the EMSD. So how is the cost assessed in this regard? I'll defer to Mr. Lai. When it comes to the capacity, there are two parts. One is the project cost. Say in the coming 10 years, the input on infrastructure. And the other part is operation. As Chairman, you said that we have engaged a contractor to operate the system for us. That is the cost counted towards our capacity. As the project cost, of course, the profit for the contractor is also included in the contract. The selection is by tender, right? Yes, there is an open tender. We have engaged a design, construct, and operate contractor. Mr. Tony Tse, well, the administration would like this bill to be endorsed this year and for charging to start in July. And in your slide, I see that you have worked out some figures. And there was an adjustment you mentioned, right? And there's mention of the CPI and the consumption charge. I would like to ask, in relation to the electricity tariff, it will be adjusted. It's in Kowloon, so for the time being, it will be the CLP. And in the future, if it's on Hong Kong Island, it will be Hong Kong Electric. I know that there is a fuel surcharge in the tariff. We have to pay. I don't know if you have to pay, you as the government. So you don't have to pay the fuel surcharge, you only have to pay for the electricity itself. PAS. Mr. Tse was right. Kai-Tak is CLP, but we did not specify it in the bill because we don't know what will happen in the future. Yes, we will take into account the change in tariff in the adjustment, but we want to avoid uncertainty. So in Schedule 2, in relation to the adjustment, there is the estimated adjustment rate. The director will publish this adjustment rate on the internet. Say, for example, for next year, say CLP announced a tariff adjustment, say a certain percentage, the director will, in the EMSD website, announce the adjustment rate. So there is no fuel surcharge. Well, let me say that I can't say whether it's a fuel surcharge, but there is an adjustment rate. Members have no questions, and in relation to Schedule 2, I'm sure member would like to follow up later. Maybe PAS, you will take us through it. Schedule 2, subclause 1. Well, it talks about the two components in the charge. And in 2 is the capacity charge and capacity overrun charge. Is C times CR. C is the contract cooling capacity. That's worked out between the director and the prospective consumer. We have already explained how this is worked out. The contract cooling capacity is the highest level to be used by the building. It's just like the horsepower of a home aircon. CR is the capacity charge rate. The contract cooling capacity may be over a period, but the charge is monthly, so we divide it by 12. There is a capacity overrun charge in case consumers underestimate their consumption or their capacity rate. If they underestimate their cooling capacity, it will affect the operation of the system. So we would like to incorporate an overrun charge. Is 10% surcharge. We charge by the month. Let's say a building starts operating in the middle of the month, so we have this pro rata charge. So the building will not be charged for a whole month if it starts operating in the middle of the month. 3, consumption charge. We will take the reading of the meter. AE is the actual cooling energy consumption. It is timed by ER, which is the consumption charge rate. 4. Surcharge and further surcharge. This is in relation to late payment. Surcharge is the amount due there will be a surcharge of 5% of the outstanding amount. There is a further surcharge is 10% if the amount overdue is more than 6 months. 5 is the capacity charge rate and consumption charge rate and adjustment. I've already gone over it. I'm not going to repeat. Please refer to the interpretation at the end. Subject period. Subject period is by the fiscal year starting on the 1st of April. There is an adjustment mechanism. There's an adjustment taking into account the change in tariff and CPI. At the beginning of the year, the change in CPI will be announced. Any questions? Yes. Please continue. I think that's all. Mr. Tony, is there any questions? Any questions about the English version of Schedule 2? Legal advisor? No? We have finished with the clause by clause. There are some textual amendments. We're still waiting to hear from the administration. At the beginning of the meeting, we mentioned about an issue raised. That is the 3 categories, at least one person from the 3 categories in relation to the appeal board. It's a simple matter. And 22. We haven't heard from any members about any CSAs. I think we need to give the administration some time to consider our comments. If you insist on your original proposal, you will have to explain to us what the operational difficulties are to include the 3 subclauses to make them appealable. From what I've heard from members, it would be better to include them as well, for the sake of completeness. The consumer may discuss with the director for a possible resumption of service. Failing that, the matter can be taken to the appeal board. You say that there can be a judicial review, but for consumers, they will think that an appeal mechanism will be fairer. And I think that in relation to suspension or termination as a result of technical issues, well, it won't really go to an appeal. Say, for example, a burst of pipes, just repair it. You're concerned that if it's allowed, then consumers may take all the matters to court. But I know that the director will have to make a request to the Bureau before the mechanism is triggered. It's not the case that if you want, you can make an appeal. Well, it seems that there is some kind of very difficult operational problems, but I don't see any explanation from you. But you're very careful with the selection of members in the appeal board. I think that the chance that it simply can't be operable is low. Having an appeal mechanism may be better for consumers.
If you say there are already existing ordinances which could serve as reference, please also let us know. Also tell us if the scenario is similar to this bill, then you could also explain that to us, because your response today simply reiterate what you've told us the last time, and I don't think members' concerns have been allayed yet. If you still believe that if we agree rather to make an amendment, please also let us look at your proposed amendments. Apparently, it would appear that we will need to convene another meeting, although we've already finished with the clause by clause. So I think we may need to call another meeting. So let's look at the timetable. First of all, the proposed date for the resumption of the second debate. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and members. I think we understand that the bill there's an urgency regarding this bill. We hope that before July we would be able to start collecting charges from the non-government users. As to when we will resume the second debate, that would depend on what happens at the next meeting. Regarding the 2 points raised by the chairman, we'll certainly respond to them. First of all, from the drafting perspective, are there any areas of the bill that can be further, enhanced? We will certainly, propose them for members' consideration, if any. And secondly, regarding what are the matters that could be subject to appeal and what are those which cannot, we would consult with the DOJ, and then we will, if there's any further proposals, we will submit them to the committee for consideration. After we've done that, we will have the confidence to tell members when will be the proposed date for the second for the resumption of the second debate.
其他事項啦。嗱咁樣嗱，我哋睇睇首先仲冇咩其他事項先，冇啦嚇。
Date of the next meeting. We're proposing that we meet on the 26th of February at 8:30. On the 24th, of this month, Tuesday, we've arranged for a visit to the Kai Tak DCS system at 9 a.m. We have both members of this bills committee and other members who are not who do not belong to this bills committee to go on the visit. So it's a good thing because from the environmental perspective and also from the energy conservation perspective,
收費方面咧，其實都係有好處。咁大家
it's a good thing and also will benefit the users. So after the visit on the 24th, I believe it would really, be helpful, and when we to our deliberation to 26, and the target is that we will complete our tasks on that date. Regarding the date for the resumption of second debate, again, we hope the government will let us know as soon as possible. All right? So far, we still have 10 more minutes. We're scheduled to finish at 10:30. Now let's see whether the administration has any other business to bring up. If not, thank you very much.